From the Broken Wheel Cycle, Volume 1, A Distant Dawn, The Listener, a Warhammer 40,000 story. The hissing white noise was like comfort. Joren sat in his chair, headphones clamped over ears, legs drawn to his chest, arms wrapped around himself, eyes tightly closed. Around him, the Vox bunker blazed with light, blinking diodes, indicator lights, cogitators humming endless calculations, each one demanding attention, pulling at his awareness, making his mind twitch and scatter. But under the headphones in the enveloping hiss of the vox-net, he could find something like peace. His head rocked slowly, a small repetitive motion. His ears sought patterns in the static, finding none, but finding something. Comfort, maybe, or just the absence of worse things. The bunker was all chaos, visual noise, auditory overload, 1,000 demands on his attention all at once. But the white noise didn't expect anything from him except that he listen. So he listened. Halvek walked in the room and paused to turn back toward the corridor, to shout at someone unseen, "That's why, you idiot! Someone has the Voxcaster on receive. It's our own feedback causing the distortion." He moved toward the equipment bank to shut it down, but stopped. Joren was still there, headphones over his ears, curled in on himself, completely oblivious to Halvek's presence, to the shouting, to the chaos of the bunker around him. Something crossed Halvek's face, a flicker he couldn't quite control. Contempt, maybe, at the kid for being so lost in his own head. But underneath that, something else. Something almost like sadness, or recognition, or both at once, knotted together too tightly to separate. He sighed. He didn't turn off the caster. Instead, he turned back toward the corridor, towards the unseen person, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "Come on, I'll show you how to screen it out." He left the bunker without looking back at Joren. The kid didn't even notice he'd been there. Halvek's shift ended. He found himself looking for Joren without quite meaning to. The Vox bunker was empty, everything turned off, as if no one had been there at all. Joren had cleaned up after himself meticulously, wiped the chair, secured the Voxcaster, left no trace. He found him in the dorm. Corner bunk, curled against the wall, reading, headphones still on. Halvek's jaw tightened. "You need to stop doing that, kid." Joren didn't notice, didn't even twitch. Halvek kicked his feet. Joren startled badly, his whole body jerking, the data slate clattering to the floor. He yanked the headphones off and looked up at Halvek with panic in his eyes. Halvek tried to soften his tone, but it came out strained. "Kid, you can't be listening to the Voxcaster out of hours. It causes feedback for the other listening systems, and those idiots are too stupid to know they can just filter it out." Joren was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was small. "I'm sorry, it helps me. The noise, it calms." He trailed off, looking away. Days passed, one after the other, a succession of mundanities, measured in non-events and routine. Monitoring for casts that needed sending down the chain. Too small or unimportant for an astropath. So old tech and tedious repetition became the substitute. The Vox bunker became a graveyard of forgotten messages, relayed through obsolete equipment by people no one remembered. Monday, list of released messages. Routine, Joren was quiet. Halvek watched him from the doorway and said nothing. Thursday, list of 2 more messages. Thursday was always slower. Joren listened to the static with his usual intensity, head tilted, hands fidgeting. Halvek left him alone. Friday, Halvek was eating dinner alone in the mess when Joren appeared in the doorway. He looked different, agitated. His usual careful self-containment had cracked. His hands were trembling slightly. "Sergeant, I heard something." Halvek set down his fork. He didn't look at Joren directly. "Heard what, kid?" "Underneath the static, in the vox-net, there's something there. Someone. Calling." Halvek's first instinct was to dismiss it. A glitch. Joren's mind finding patterns that weren't there. The kind of thing that happened when you listened too hard to white noise. But he saw the genuine distress in the kid's face, the need to be believed. He almost said yes, almost told Joren to show him. Instead, he picked his fork back up. "Kid, there's nothing out there but static. You're listening too hard." It happened later that night. Joren was at his station, headphones on, when something changed in his posture. His whole body went rigid, his hands flew across the controls. There it is. Do you hear it?" Halvek wasn't even in the bunker yet, but Joren's voice, urgent, desperate, pulled him in. When Halvek arrived, Joren was already breaking protocol, boosting bandwidth illegally, repiping the signal through a half-functional auxiliary coil. His fingers moved with practiced precision, executing maneuvers that should have taken authorization, approval, oversight. The message was fragmented, distorted, but it was there. "Joren, stop. Stand down. You're violating. Just give me 30 seconds, please. Just 30 seconds. Halvek opened his mouth to order him to stop. To cite protocol, breach of conduct, illegal use of equipment. The words were ready, the reprimand already formed. But then he saw Joren, not the kid breaking rules, not the operator violating procedure, but the need in his face, the desperate, aching need to help, to make sense of the noise he was hearing. Not confidence, not pride, just, I hear something and I need someone to believe me. It was no longer Joren, it was his son. Sitting at the kitchen table years ago, repeating softly over and over, I hear something, Dad, I hear something. And Halvek had been too tired, too frustrated, too unwilling to listen, so his son had stopped trying, had gotten quieter, till one day he eventually stopped speaking altogether. Halvek should have listened then, he should listen now. His throat tightened. He couldn't speak without a word. He stepped aside. Joren's fingers flew, triangulating, filtering, pulling meaning from noise with a focus so absolute it was almost meditative. Got it. I've got coordinates, distress beacon, military frequency. Guard squad, I think. They're in trouble. Halvek picked up the Vox. This is Frontier Listening Station 7. We have a distress signal. Coordinates following. But the signal was already fragmenting, breaking apart. The auxiliary coil wasn't enough. The bandwidth boost was reaching its limits. Joren's hands flew across the controls, trying to lock it down, trying to hold it steady. His voice cracked. No, it's there. It's still there, I can hear it. Just a little more power, He was nearly crying, his body shaking with frustration. Halvek recognized it again, the desperation, the need to be heard. Halvek turned and walked out of the bunker, leaving Joren still triangulating. He found Sorvin, the comms manager, in the equipment bay. I need auxiliary power rerouted to Listening Station 7, now. Sorvin looked up, annoyed. Not authorized. Protocol says, override it. Full auxiliary allocation. 5 minutes. Sergeant, I can't just... Halvek tried reasoning. There's a guard squad in distress. They need us to boost the signal. 5 minutes is all we need. Sorvin shook his head, already turning back to his work. Not my problem. Chain of command says no, and I follow the chain of command. Halvek felt something cold settle in his chest. He pulled out a data chip. Old, worn. He'd been carrying it for 3 years. Insurance. The kind of thing you kept hidden until you absolutely needed it. He paused for a moment, reluctant to commit, reluctant to stoop so low. Sorvin looked at him, confusion and irritation mixing across his face. Halvek took a deep breath as if to come to a decision, or maybe finally accepted the weight of what he was about to do. You remember that bandwidth audit last year? the one that came back clean. Sorvin's hands stilled. It came back clean because I made sure it did. I saw what you were downloading, the materials you were accessing through the vox-net using restricted bandwidth, the things that would get you court-martialed if anyone knew. Halvek set the chip on the desk between them. This is a copy. It goes into an evidence file tomorrow unless you reroute that power. Right now. For a moment, Sorvin just stared at it. Then, without a word, he reached for the controls. His hands moved mechanically, entering the override codes. The auxiliary power began to surge toward listening station 7. It took 30 seconds, maybe less. He finished, stepped back, didn't look at Halvek. Then, from the other room, Joren's voice came through the Vox speaker, urgent and breaking. "I've got it. I've got the signal. Guard squad. Coordinates locked." Sorvin closed his eyes. For a long moment he didn't move. Then, quietly, almost to himself. If I'd known there was actually someone out there. He trailed off. I would have done it. Without the chip. Without any of this. Halvek didn't know what to say to that. Maybe something about faith. About not knowing if your choice will matter, but making it anyway. But he just sighed heavily, reached down and took the data chip back from the desk. He pocketed it slowly, deliberately, letting Sorvin see that he was keeping it. "You understand," Sorvin said quietly, not looking at Halvek, "how that could look if anyone found out." "They won't," Halvek said, "as long as you keep this quiet." He turned and walked back to the bunker, leaving Sorvin sitting in the dark of the equipment bay. That night, Halvek sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at an old cracked pict of his son. The image was worn, faded. A boy of maybe 12 standing in front of a building Halvek could no longer remember. The boy's expression was careful, closed off. Even then he was learning not to show too much. Halvek whispered to the image, knowing the boy would never hear it. I'm sorry I couldn't listen. I'm sorry I left." He set the pick down and sat in the dark. The next morning Joren returned to the Vox Bay. He put on the headset and slipped back into his chair, legs drawn up, arms wrapped around himself. The static welcomed him. The white noise settled over him like a blanket. Halvek watched from the doorway for a moment, then stepped inside. Joren didn't notice at first. Then Halvek spoke quietly. "If you hear anything else, call me." Joren turned, pulling one headphone off. "The signal got through," Halvek said. "Subsector Command received it. They mounted an extraction. Guard squad made it out, and they weren't alone. There were escaped slaves with them. One of them was carrying data, intel about supply routes, troop movements, the kind of thing that changes operational planning." He paused, letting that settle. "You were right. You heard something real. And because you insisted, because you wouldn't stop listening, people lived. Intel that matters reached the right hands." Joren was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for believing me," he said finally. Halvek nodded. "If you hear anything else," he repeated, "call me, day or night." He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. He was about to say something else, maybe about his son, maybe about how he understood now what it meant to be listened to, but he didn't. Some things didn't need words. He left Joren in the bunker in the comforting hiss of the vox-net and went back to his own bunk. That night, alone in his bunk, Halvek hummed a tune he hadn't dared in a long time. It was a lullaby, the one his son used to ask for before bed. The one he'd stopped singing years ago because hearing his own voice saying those words felt like drowning. Now, in the dark, with no one to hear him, he let the melody come. Soft, careful, like coaxing something frightened out of hiding.